I would say personally, it was conflict that was a real game changer for me. Like, I think I became a seeker. I think we could call it that. I became a spiritual seeker because of conflict, because of this very point that you're making. Many years ago, I was working in a corporate. Is it okay just to go straight into a little story?
Absolutely. We love a story on this podcast.
So I was working in a corporate environment in a merchant bank, and I was the youngest person in the team. And I always felt like, as a result of that, I was treated differently to the rest of the team. And my boss would always give me the work that others weren't doing. I was always treated quite badly, or so I felt at the time. And it was around that time that I decided to learn to meditate, because it was a fairly high stress environment. I wasn't a banker as such. I was working in telecommunications, but within the banking industry. And I was getting to the point where I felt that this person was impossible. And I'm trying to basically have a happy life whilst going to work in these oppressive conditions, you know. So eventually I decided I needed to learn to meditate to be able to feel more comfortable at work. After I got, and it was a centre in Sydney, Kadam Centre in Sydney, Kadam Meditation Centre Sydney, that I went to. And after a while, once I got to know the teachers and the community, I asked them this question. I said, look, I've got this incredibly difficult boss, and can you give me some advice on how I can deal with this person? And the teacher, even now it makes me smile, but the teacher said, you're going to need to love him. And I remember my everything dropped. You know, I thought, I was expecting him to say, well, you know, be more patient, you'll have to accept. The last thing I was expecting was, you need to love the person who's making your life difficult. So I think at the time I even argued with him. You know, I even said, no, do you mean I need to be more accepting? He said, no, you need to love him. And I said, but do you have any idea how difficult he is? And the teacher said to me, it's entirely up to you what you do, but if you want to solve this problem, you've got to love him. Oh no. So the next day when I went to work, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to love him. I was prepared to take this on as a project. So I looked at him and completely failed. Yeah. I thought, nah, this is impossible. The next day I tried again. So every day I tried again, even though for quite a few days I got nowhere. And I started to use I started to get creative. One thing I did was I remember this clearly one day, was I superimposed mentally, not literally, I mentally superimposed my brother's face onto my boss. And one thing I learned was that my brother could get away with a lot more than my boss could get away with. And so every day I kept trying, you know, these little creative ideas. And, you know, they say Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So it took a while. But after, I don't know, 6 weeks, again, I'll never forget it, my boss started to tell me jokes. I'm not saying they were funny, but he, you know, in these corporate settings, you sit in a cubicle, yeah, with your desk, with the partitions around you. Anyway, he'd come rolling over on his chair to my cubicle, tell me a joke, and then roll off again. And I thought, oh my goodness me, he's completely different. And, you know, another week on, he started to tell me about some difficulties he was having with his wife, with his kids, like some real troubles he was having at home. Now, we were never going to be best friends, but we definitely had a nice relationship. So after a while, I went back. I was going to the centre regularly anyway, and I went back to the centre and I spoke to the teacher and I said, you know what? I did what you said. Like, I loved him. I did what you said. And I have to say, you were right. He changed. And then the teacher looked at me in the eyes and said, no, he didn't. And even today, I get, I get goosebumps, right? Because it suddenly dawned on me that in reality, I was the problem. And that because my mind had changed from, I don't know, maybe being a bit tense or self-focused, because it had changed into caring about him, my reality had actually changed. And it was from that experience that I thought, you know what, I need to see how far the rabbit hole goes. I need to, if I can change my reality so drastically within a couple of months, how much can reality change through changing the mind? And so then it was at that point that I then became more serious about the Buddhist path, and it was eventually that experience that led to me ordaining as a monk.